Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to the Good Day Matrix. My name is Daz, and I'm incredibly proud to be here today with the very legendary James Ashcroft. So thank you very much for your time today, James.
Kia ora. My pleasure, my pleasure.
Proudly hailing from Paraparaumu, Ngāti Kahu, Ngā Puhi, James is an actor, director, producer, trustee of Creative Bay of Plenty, and was the executive director of the Performing Arts Network of New Zealand. James has a huge history across the arts spectrum. As a book lover, as you can see by that beautiful wall behind him, as a dad to 3 gorgeous girls, and quite the creative genius. So I am extremely, extremely excited to be here with you today, James.
Oh, thank you.
As you know, we talk all things wellness. And we're very passionate about the fact that wellness is not just body and mind, and that it's all things in that spectrum of community and environment and identity. And there's so much more past that of financial wellness, but we focus on those 5 pillars. So today we'll go through those 5 pillars with you, and we'll start with body and then just merge our way on through.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So recently you had a bit of a realization or a reminder of how critical physical exercise was in terms of your creativity. So tell us a bit about that journey and what you do for your body, and what you do also on those hard days when often we engineer exercise or movement out of our days, how you put that in.
Yeah, it was quite a startling reminder with everything where the world's gone over the last year and a half for us. My year got off to a great start. My first film premiering at the Sundance Film Festival in the United States, which was a wonderful achievement, but obviously everything's done remotely. And so since January, it's my life really took on this space via Zoom, and that meant a lot of sitting, a lot of being hunched over a computer, and a lot of relying on my head really more than anything else to be present. It didn't really matter if the body wasn't, as long as it got to the meeting on time. So what I started to notice was that lethargy in my body and my physicality, and that translates to your brain and my creative spark. So that becomes very troublesome when you're trying to work creatively, even if it's in writing. So after trying to do everything but engage my body, trying to catch up on sleep, trying to do all these things, which is really just you sort of going, no, don't make me do that, don't make me start the engine again. I talked this through with my wife, and she, in knowing me and my lifestyle and everything, she went, the hardest thing for James to do right now will be to send off that first email about inquiring. And she had found a personal trainer. I had been talking about a personal trainer for a while, and he lives up the road. And she sent off that first email from my email address saying, "Hi, it's James here. What's the deal? How much do you charge? What do you do?" And reading back on it, it's just like I don't sound anything like that in my emails. But that literally was the hardest step for me, and that was I'm glad she did that. I would have done it myself, but ultimately that was the biggest step that I had to make, was actually getting over the line and actually engaging and having some accountability to a real person. I started a regime of working 3 times a week with a personal trainer who lives up the road here at the Mount. And what that did, literally by the end of the first week, is that it just shrugged off a whole bunch of weight that I had accumulated, or fog, as I think that's what it feels like. And I'm always surprised at how quickly the body remembers, and just activating it quickly. The body starts to go, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I know how to move. I know how to, interact and engage these muscles.
Yeah.
And it's been new for me. It's very weights based, which is something I haven't done before. I was usually in the yoga route, or running and cardio, but what I've really found is that it's been surprising that I'm glad I've stuck with it. I needed accountability to somebody to stick with it. It wasn't something that I could do and hold on my own. And the surprise of it all is that I'm really enjoying the weight training, the strength based training. And it's just something new that I hadn't ever thought I would be capable of doing. But it's also utilizing a whole bunch of aspects of body memory, how the body works that come from my acting days. Yeah. And that correlation has sort of made it stick, I think, for me. It's made it fun. So, there are still days where I go, I don't want to go. But I have that accountability to Benji, my trainer, but also I have that accountability and the reward of doing it myself. And I just find that sort of like in those rough days when, or those rough weeks when it feels like the water is very hot inside, it's just putting some ice cubes in there and just bringing that temperature down, and the clarity comes with it. Yeah. Yeah. So the one thing I'm enjoying the most is that I feel like I was a hunchback 2 months ago, and now I can feel that my horizon line has lifted. Yeah. And it's a really wonderful reminder, and to have the body activated as a whole. Yeah.
I find the same. My husband, if I've had a few lazy days because I've got terrible posture, and he's like, you can tell when you've been exercising because I just stand so much stronger. Like it's I think it's an innate thing in our bodies. It just recognizes when we're feeling good and we're feeling strong that our shoulders come back and we really own it. And accountability, honestly, I don't think we give that enough attention, right? That you've got that accountability partner and you'll turn up. It's when we're on our own and when we have those days, and we're like, oh, do I really feel like doing this today? But if you know someone's waiting for you, like, no, I'll be there. I'll turn up.
Absolutely. And it's the thing I always, I find, it's a nice reminder because, like, as a director, you're accountable to like hundreds of people every day. And that's a really wonderful feeling. I mean, it brings a certain level of pressure, but it's also, I find it frees me up in many ways, because you have to give yourself over to those who are working with you and those who you're working for in the story that you're going to tell. Yet it had been a very easy thing to put in place for me in terms of engaging myself physically. Yeah. I was so reluctant to, but really it was that as soon as I met him and I knew I'd get along with him and that this was a good thing to do, that accountability was very easy to move into and start that routine. And now I think it's coming up to about 7-8 weeks with Benji. Nice. I'm able to, that routine now is set in place for me. I still need him. I know my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, that's something that I go to and enjoy now.
Yeah. And it's just that accumulation. The more you build the habit, the stronger the muscle gets of that habit. So you just got to keep adding to it and refining it. When you talked about fog before, we talked about that when we caught up a couple of weeks ago around how you've got the forecast and you can sort of gather your thoughts around your mind, like, okay, so that's the forecast for this week coming, and then sort of put some plans in place around that to make sure that you're okay if it's going to be a sort of a down week or where you're sitting. And the other night we did a wellness chat with Dan Walker, was one of our guests, and he talked about maramataka, which I'd never heard of before, and I'm embarrassed that I hadn't, which is the phases of the moon, and how you sort of can read things from there. And one that I loved was muti whenua, which is what he talked about the other night, which is those days where you just need to treat yourself and literally Netflix and chill kind of thing, or treat your whānau and nurture whare tapawhā to make sure that you're actually feeling okay, and that it's okay to just down tools that day and go, you know what, this is not going to be the best day for that, so I need to treat, or I need to just take care of body, mind, wherever I'm sitting, to make sure that I'm okay. So what things do you do that make you feel really at peace and relaxed?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing would be making sure that I surround myself and be present with my family. And if that means, because normally when I get to a really sort of, when the weather gets really dark, and my tendency is to try and draw away. It's to go to bed. It's to try and be in a quiet space with a book, which I can't read, and just sort of like keep to myself. When actually it's the complete opposite. What I need is actually just to be physically present, and that doesn't mean doing anything necessarily. That might mean just like lying on the couch with the girls, or letting them crawl all over me, and just sort of be present. We did this on the weekend because last week there was I noticed there was a bit of a dip for myself, and that it was a great day on Saturday, and we decided we're gonna no computers for the girls or for myself. There's always an innate desire, I find, to try and engage in work in some way, but your chances are the quality of my work is never going to be very good. So just make a blanket rule to shut it down, and we just stay outside. And my wife's very active in the garden. I wasn't really feeling it. So I just sort of started, pruning one tree. And then by the end of the day, we've gone around and we've done the whole garden. It's just taken me, a few hours to sort of get in the rhythm. And the girls just come and go and play all day long. And actually then we've got the whole back garden is done. We sit out there for dinner that night, and we're just enjoying being together. And that's sort of about, having good food, having company, making sure we're getting that outdoor experience, which I find is also really essential to me, because I'll always sort of retreat indoors. And it's not necessarily about doing the gardening as such. It's just about making sure you're present. For me, that's the biggest thing I can do.
Yeah.
And and then have a movie that night with the family, or just me and my wife, or whatever. But don't shut yourself in your cave, James, and look for the comfort of a bed, because it can become a prison. I find I can make what I perceive my safe spaces. They can become prisons before you know it.
It's so true. And I just respect the fact that you can recognize that, like that's a huge thing. So many of us get stuck before we've recognized that it's starting to happen. So it's a huge, huge thing to be able to recognize that. Do you have strategies, like do you talk to your whānau around, like prior to these things happening? Have you sort of had those conversations of this is what I need in these situations, so that they can sort of come in? Because when we're in those situations, right, we don't actually know how to ask. We don't know how to say, I'm not feeling okay, I need this.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is something that's developed over a long time for me, and with my wife, that especially that ability to be, have really crystal clear and easy communication about it. Because I remember back when years ago, when there was had those sort of bigger moments of impact. It's it's sort of like you're set on fire and you're going, actually, I think I need some help. And it's getting away from that, because once you're that far gone, there's not much you can do to navigate that. Where now it's literally got to the state where the communication and understanding what's needed is so open and clear for my whole family as well, my daughters included. Is just I will literally say, hey, I think I'm feeling I'm on the slide. It's just sort of, and then she just knows. I've acknowledged it myself, which I often think is the biggest thing. It's sort of that tendency to go, oh no, it's not an emergency. It's not an issue. I think I'm sure it will be fine. We're just sort of saying, and that is literally all I say is I think I'm on the slide. And then we just sort of navigate that. And there's certain things that, you know, we both agree to do. I mean, it's like, if I'm feeling that way, don't drink, you know, at least then I'm being accountable to myself and, you know, my wife by saying that. Eat healthy. You know, if I say that night, oh, look, can't be bothered, let's do takeaways. No.
Yeah.
No, we're going to have, you know, we'll have takeaways another night when you're not on the slide. It's just about managing those things. I mean, we're fairly clean living and healthy living, but it's just about going, cool. If that's what the forecast is for the next few days, then we just have to stay steady.
Yeah.
You know, little things. Let's go for a walk around the block with the kids after dinner. Let's walk down to the beach or something. Yeah. Just small steps that are going to mitigate that change in the weather for me. Prove to be the best preventatives, I find.
Yeah, I think I love that word you just used, steady. I think that's what it is, right? It's just this. Yep, cool. We can feel this happening. So how do we just keep that steady course going without too many dramatic changes or things to it? Just how do we ride that to get you? I love that, James.
Yeah, it's and it is because ideally, I mean, there's, you know, in my line of work, I'm very excitable when things go well. The high can be great, and it's sort of like, hey, this is never going to be an issue again. But you know, that can be a bit of a trigger too, that high and the big lows. So it is just about going. If you see it coming, you don't have to do anything big. It's just about, as you say, keeping steady.
Yeah, I love that. When identity, James, we often talk about how important it is to know who you are and where you've come from, because we all believe very highly that all of that history and that whakapapa really influences who you are as you navigate your way through the world. So tell us a bit about your whakapapa and where you hail from.
Yeah. My mother is from the far north, from Whatiwhiwhi, Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Kahu. My father is from deep in the mines of Wigan, England. So they are literally from polar opposites. And, you know, I sort of find myself in the middle a bit, you know, in terms of growing up in Paraparaumu essentially in a Pākehā household. I didn't have a lot to do with my Māori family, except, you know, when they came through town or, you know, stopped by to visit. But I had a very close relationship with my siblings and their children as well. So over the course of my life and through my journey, especially with, you know, going to drama school and being involved in that's been a way for me to reconnect with my indigeneity, my whakapapa, and my identity. And you know, it's really interesting now, you know, being a filmmaker and having a modicum of success with that first outing. You know, a lot of people are at home often question, they go, are you a Māori filmmaker, or are you a filmmaker who identifies as Māori? And I always say, you know, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, you know, I'm a friend. I don't preface any of that with Māori, because I am Māori through and through. That is who I am. My journey of knowledge and understanding of my whakapapa, my tikanga, and my reo language is something that I continue to do. And actually through what I do as a director, that brings me closer to it. And I think that's where and how I bring my family with me, because regardless of any of the stories that I'm telling and what they might look like on the surface, there is a connection there in some way that's allowed me to get under the material or engage with it, that's personal. Now, that might not necessarily be visible on the surface, but that is my to the story. And it's often around family. It's around, you know, the relationships and the complexities of people. And I'm always drawing from those closest to me, especially from my brothers, who were a huge influence on my film Coming Home in the Dark. And a lot of the questions and memories that I have that have come up over the years looking back on them and their journeys through life. So family's always family's always close to me, but also in my work, but also, you know, I'm also aware of, I have a set of questions which I often start to look at when I'm doing the work, is asking, you know, if I put my shoes in my wife's, if I put myself in my wife's shoes, what would she see here? How, if I can play the role, as it were, or my father or my mother. I mean, mum's a huge aspect of a lot of these questions in films that I'm exploring, the stories that I'm exploring, because ours has been at times a very tempestuous relationship, and this is a way of being able to hold that relationship as something valuable, as something changing, rather than sort of, you know, oh, that's something I've closed the door on.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to, you know, it's still growing essentially.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I often, you know, my family are always sort of there as arbiters of the work in many ways. And I think it's really useful. And always, you know, my wife's feedback on a script or an idea is always the first. Her notes are always the first. We argue. I you know, put her through hell in the early stages, no doubt. But it's also, you know, I'm making the stories and the films that I'm making are for my family first and foremost, and myself.
That's amazing. And like we talked about that other day, like perspectives and having those perspectives, that's and as you said, it's the key to filmmaking, is just being able to see things from all those different lenses of how the story comes together. It's pretty magical.
Yeah. And I'm really lucky that I work in you know, I have a vocation that allows me to do that. Just then I remembered, you know, there's, in Coming Home in the Dark, there's huge landscapes in that film that we specifically shot on because of the tone and everything. And those were landscapes that my brother used to take me, one of my brothers used to take me biking on when I was like 10. Go on these magical bike rides, which felt like huge adventures to a 10-year-old at the time, and they felt quite dangerous because we felt far away from everything. But drawing on actually those tangible memories too, and what those moments, looking back with a different perspective, what those moments really meant, and you know, how instructional and how much of an influence you know, those family members were at different times in my life.
It's massive. So one of my next questions is, who's one person who's had an impact on your life and why? But it's sounding a lot like all of your whānau, but is there someone else as well that has positively impacted your life?
Yeah, look, I've had a few, and I've been lucky enough to have had a few, but I'll say Elizabeth Taylor, not the actor. No, Elizabeth Taylor. The first job I ever had was in a video store, and I was 13, and I was one of those kids who used to hang around the video stores all the time and rent movies on the weekends. And we had a work experience day in third form at college, where you had to go find a job for a day and everything. And I went to the local video store and I said, "Can you give me a job for, you know, just the day doing whatever?" And she said, "No, I won't, but I will give you a job on the weekends. You work Saturday nights and Sunday mornings." And I thought that was, you know, that was great. And I used to, you know, that was sort of my film school. That was, you know, I got videos for free and I got paid, which was amazing, you know, but I would have done it just for the free videos. So that was sort of my access and, you know, entry into the world. But Liz, you know, I worked with her mainly on Saturday nights, and, you know, she started to, you know, broaden my horizons in terms of what kind of movies were out there, because we used to have an art house section. And, you know, as I grew older, she would, you know, she was a big fan of art house films. So she actually introduced me to a whole other level of, you know, teen comedy action films that I was, you know, only new. And you know, we really got along well, and in many ways she was quite a, you know, had a big influence on my tastes. I think, you know, she was a very cultured woman. She's a very intelligent woman, and you know, she really sort of, I think, had a big influence on, you know, shaping the kinds of things that I looked at, or being curious, and also, I think, you know, just that risk that she took in terms of going, well, you know, you're a bit of a geek, obviously, and you know these things, so you may as well work for us. That would be, you know, a better thing to do than, you know, just having you hanging around our store. And she continues, you know, Liz and her partner Tim were both at the premiere of Coming Home in the Dark here in Wellington. So it's a relationship that I've kept alive over all these years. And I think it really, you know, it's something I try and do with emerging talent, irregardless of ages. If someone sort of shows determination and enthusiasm and passion, you know, why not give them a chance in some way, support them in the smallest way, you know, and because I'm the benefactor of that myself, because of people like Liz, and like I said, I've been very lucky to have a few people like that. But you know, in many ways, she sort of, you know, set me on my course for filmmaking, I think, by giving me that job.
I reckon Caroline, who, you know, we went to high school together, and we had a teacher called Mrs. Catherine Ryan, and she was the pivotal point in my life. So I was the kid that always got told, like, my teacher literally said, don't do bursary, there's no point. I honestly, she even said to my mum, I really think she should pull out. It's all over. And that was my history teacher. And I was never a bad kid. I turned up, I did all the right things, but it just didn't click for me, right? And then she gave me diligence and drama in 7th form, and it was, well, year 13 now. And it was my first ever academic award, ever. And I was 17 years old. And I remember walking through the hall because we've just got these little notes saying, you're up for an academic award. And I was like, what the heck? And I walked past her in the hallway and I was like, Mrs. Ryan, I'm up for an award, because it didn't say what it was for. And I just remember her big giant grin, and she goes, well, I bet you deserved it. And just kept walking. And then when I got that award, I hugged her afterwards. I was like, this is my first one ever. I wasn't even going to go study after school. I was like, well, better go get a job, because, you know, no one else thinks I can do it. And went and studied, and I was graduating top 3 off both the diploma and degree that I did. And no one, my mum and dad were like, is this the same kid? Like, but it just took that one person, that one moment. I swear it's massive to just believe in someone.
It's huge, and it doesn't have to be, you know, little and often. I think can have a huge effect. It's not, it's, you know, especially at that age. I think it's just, or I find in a creative endeavor at any age, just to be seen and acknowledged that you've been seen and heard can be an incredible, and you can run on that fuel for years. And it's actually, I think it's the easiest thing to give somebody, is and can be the most beneficial to them at that time.
So agree. In terms of community, you moved from Paraparaumu and you moved to Tauranga with your family a few years ago now. And you really had to shift gears because you became a stay-at-home dad, or your primary caregiver, while your wife picked up a new role there. So what was that like in terms of coming into a new place and really having to connect and find new relationships and new communities that you were going to be a part of?
It was pretty hard. The focus was on my girls and looking after them while they were very young. So I sort of found myself occupied, but in all honesty, it wasn't until about 5 years in that, you know, I'm starting to go, like, we don't really have any people that, you know, I would call friends. We have like lots of friendly acquaintances. But, and, you know, Debbie my wife, she made a really good point. She was just like, well, you know, maybe we just have to be the organizers of the group. You know, maybe that's our role. You know, we have a great friend, Rosie, back in Wellington, who makes stuff happen for a good whole bunch of us who always get together every year and do this. But really, she's the one who actually she makes that first step, which is sending out the invitation. So we kind of had to go, okay, well, let's step a bit firmer into that space of curating people. And one thing we used to love doing was entertaining, having dinner parties in Wellington. I don't mean fancy dinner parties, but our dinner parties were about how do we bring different groups of people together, rather than just the same old people who know and love each other. And so we sort of decided, no, well, let's step into that space again, and that's something that we is exciting for us. It's great to be able to host and do that. And of course, the first dinner party ends up in tears and two people arguing drunkenly and stuff. It was just sort of like, it's a sign. We've moved on since that point and got over that. And, but it was sort of going, if you want a community, sometimes you might have to actually be the one to build it. As much as it would be great for someone else to come calling for you all the time, maybe there's a whole bunch of people like you who are reticent for whatever reason. And a lot of those friends that we've developed are actually all out of towners. They are people who sort of came to the Bay at a similar time, and then since then we've obviously gone on to make friendships with people who have lived here for a number of times. But it was a case of for developing a friendship community, it was a case of going, right, you need someone to start the party, and it's really lovely to see that when we do put out an invite to get together, everyone always says yes, or they're interested to, and those people have gone on to make friendships for themselves amongst those groups. I think hosting, acknowledging that in order to have community part of it for myself and my wife is about going, well, hosting is a big part of it, because it again is a sense of accountability to others, because whenever I'm always the one who, whenever we get invited out, Saturday or something, I always go, oh no, we can't be bothered and tired or whatever. So this year especially, part of that finding and broadening your experience of community for me is about just saying yes. What's the worst that can happen? And part of that is really, I think I've come to realize, it's just especially with the way the world's been for the last 12 months, is I've just been out of practice too. I haven't had the opportunity to practice being social with people who I might not know, who it might take some effort to engage and be reinvigorated, but it's important. It is a skill. It is a craft to engaging with people, which I've got no problem doing every day in my work life, but I have such resistance at times to doing it in my social life. So it's about sort of going, well, actually, you just again need to get back into a routine of it. So like tonight, for example, I got invited to come talk to a book club that are friends, and because they read Coming Home in the Dark was one of the last month's reading items, and I said yes, why not just to talk about the film or the book, but just going like, oh, okay, this is a new community that I don't know. It's going to be really good practice, and that's the worst that can happen. That you'll go and have a pleasant chat and get a bit of socialization going, and at best you'll meet some new people who who knows what will happen there.
Well, number one, I think you're going to go in thinking you're talking about coming, but actually you're going to end up being their book guru and go, actually, I could do this all day. Look at all the books I have. I've read every single one in the whole wide world.
I am coming with a few recommendations. So.
I can just imagine you're going, I found my people. Hello, people. I'll be back next week.
It's nice, and it is nice finding, one thing I knew coming here is that I wasn't going to just suddenly land in a community, a thriving film community or a thriving, artistic community. that's why I decided to, join the board of Seabolt Creative Bay of Plenty, because it sort of came at a time where I was just like, oh, I need to start to, make connections with artistically focused or minded people and branch back out into that community rather than sort of sitting in isolation. Because it's actually the stimulus of, it's actually a lot easier to hang out with non-film folk than no one wants to be in a room full of directors who are all talking about themselves and criticizing each other. It's quite nice too, but it's nice to be able to just sort of meet and talk and exchange ideas and focus around different art forms or art policy or what sort of needs to be developed in the local fabric of the region with people who have those similar interests and intentions in that, and I wouldn't have come into contact with those people through just a film perspective or a film community. So it's actually, I find the more nourishment I get outside of what I do for my vocation, the better I'm served as a person and the better I'm served as a filmmaker as well.
100%. And I tell you what, another thing too is those meetings I dread, where I'm meeting someone new, or I'm kind of like, oh, do I really need this on my plate today? Is this something I should really be doing? They're generally the ones that my team remind me that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, do I need to do this one today? And they'll go, Daz, every single time you say that, that's the one where you walk away going, wow, I got, like I've just met this amazing person and they do this and that's so cool. I didn't know this and I've learned all this stuff, but I'm your friend. I'm the one who always instigates little gatherings, but I always make it a purpose so I've got clusters of friends in so many different avenues, and I love pulling good humans together. So there's nothing better for me than a friend like from my netball side who meets a friend from my teaching side. But I'm like, the two of you need to meet, because you guys will just be magic when you guys meet, and they do, and you just sit back and just in awe of seeing all this connection happen. I love it.
Yeah, social alchemy, isn't it? It's a great thing. And I think too, part of the reticence comes from just being out of habit of saying no. It's easier to say no. I mean, not just in terms of community and developing community, but I find it's easier just to say no because it's pushed aside then, rather than saying yes. So my wife has accepted that I will say yes every time. I've agreed to that, and I'm going to grumble every time before we go out, and she'll just block. And every time it's just like, hey, I had a great night.
Yeah.
She's sort of like, yeah, glad you did.
Yeah, she'll be waiting for it too. Like, tell me how good a time you had. I'm waiting. and it is hard as we get older, in our 30s and 40s, it's harder to make friends, and it's extremely hard when you move into a new area. So that's again why I make a point of, if I meet someone, I'm like, hey, come over here, come and nest in this group, and you'll end up finding someone that becomes your friend to start with, and then it sort of starts to bubble over. But it's a personality thing too, right? I'm an only child, so I'm like introverted, but then I'm extroverted at the same time. So I love my own space. I could stay home all the time. Love to organize things, but when I'm invited to things, I'm like, and I really have to drag my feet. And my husband is the same as your wife. You're gonna you're gonna enjoy it when you get there. You just have to get there, and then it's fine. It's just, I don't know why it's always been that little transporty bit, but I have a really terrible habit of being able to engineer myself out of situations. So I'll stand there and go, nobody really wants to talk to me, and then I start to regress, and then I start thinking, how am I going to get out of here, because I don't sort of fit, or I don't belong here. And it's just a stupid mind thing. If I just took a step and talked to someone, it'd be fine. Yeah, absolutely. It's I find I have to, exactly what you said. I have to, if I'm in a social situation, stop having a conversation with yourself and have a conversation with someone who's actually there, because you're what you have to say to yourself is actually quite boring anyway. It's take a ask a provocative question, or find some middle ground, or be curious. Be curious. Most people are always willing to talk about themselves in that sense of opening up. Yeah, I learned a couple of years ago from Cassie Romer, if you've heard of Cassie. She was a New Zealand apprentice. She's one of the mentors.
Right.
And she said, gosh, where was I going with that? What was her question she asked? She never ever says, what do you do? So she wouldn't walk up to you and be like, so, hey, James, what do you do? Because she's like, boring. She wants to know deeper questions than that. Who are you? Tell me about you. So she actually changes the angle. So instead of just being like, I'm a director, and I'd be like, I'm a business owner. Cool. But Kiwis are terrible, right? Because we don't like bolstering our feathers and being like, well, actually, how long have you got? Because, you know, I do quite a lot of cool stuff. We sort of box it down. So how to get the open comms up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's again, and it's that thing of like, that's a skill, and it's something that I think is innate to all of us, but it can be definitely learned and encouraged, and it applies to everything. There's no situation where that is not valuable.
And that sort of ties us nicely into environment, which is our last pillar to talk about today. But with environment, we talk about it in so many different lenses. So we talk about like our home environment, we talk about our work environments, you can talk about sustainability, and you can talk about the environment you create around yourself. So what you're putting out into the world and what you're getting back. So, you know, if you're being kind, you can expect that people are going to reciprocate that kindness. If you're not being very open and honest about what's going on, then you can imagine that you're going to get that same back. If you're asking someone else questions like, well, you wouldn't tell me how you are, so I'm not about to share with you what's going on with my life. But for you, with your moving, I thought we'd focus more on sort of environment in terms of the actual moving from Paraparaumu, going to Tauranga, and finding those places that you connect with, and then maybe your favorite place that you actually like to go to that really sort of connects and calms you, but also supports your system.
Yeah, the big discovery for me with working from home and being in a new city and sort of having initially a sort of a sort of shallow pool of connection to community and place is that you're putting a lot of pressure for that home environment, which really should be one that's most calming, which is most sort of sacred and nourishing to your well-being. You're putting a lot of different pressures on what that is, and I found for a number of years working from home incredibly difficult, and what that really meant was that I could never truly be relaxed at home because it feels like you're at work. It feels, and I'm not talking just about, you know, delineation of rooms. I mean, like talking about the laptop being able to go, you know, on your knee in any room, and what that does, you know, and one of the ways that we had to do and helped us get to know the wider region was if we were going to have a weekend at home, because if you stay at home, there's always stuff to be done, is that we had to get away for family time. And that would be as simple as going to stay at a friend's house somewhere, going away camping, you know, and I'm talking 45 minutes up the road. It doesn't have to be a big trek, but it was about changing up our surroundings to ensure that we're re-engaging together in a much, you know, more sort of in a more grounded way as a family unit, and not having all the distractions of, you know, the television, the laptops, the couch. You know, nothing more distracting than your own couch. And that was a really sort of good way to have many adventures, but also connect as a unit and connect with the region. And from that, you know, we've, in terms of a favorite grounding place, is we go to a campsite outside of Whangarei, which is on the back of a farm, and it's on an inlet, and it's an eco campsite which the owner James created over a number of years, and it's very small. I think it can take about 30 people, and we've been going there for 5-6 years now, in the holidays, and that's one of those places which we've now been able to build memories and experiences for our whole family. But it's one of those places, it's near the sea. You camp right on the edge of, the inlet, the water. It's completely surrounded by bush. There's nothing else to do there except, be amongst nature and swim and walk and, fish or whatever and play. And that's not only healthy for the kids, it's really healthy for me. And that is what I need when I need to sort of shrug off everything. As much as I think a 5-star resort would be great, and I wouldn't say no to, it's actually just sort of getting back to that pace of, being as connected as I can be with nature, and a good book. I find I can read. I read better there. I sleep better there.
Wow.
I play more there. I'm better humor. The shoulders, they drop.
Yeah.
And so that's and we've grown to, that place is now part of our children's lives growing up. They have all those memories that are really important. So I'm going there and being able to enjoy it for myself, but also really enjoy it from the perspective of, the kids and everything there. So it's an important place.
So important. Mine is Taumaranui, which is not beautiful and as yours, but mine is, that's where my whānau came from, and that's where I get to go and sit with my nana at her grave, which is again strange, but that's my place. So if I feel like I'm getting really tight and tense, I'm like, somebody needs to get me to Taumaranui. That's where I sit there with her, and I just feel like I'm like, oh, okay, all right, and then I do the internal chat, normally weep, at different chats that I'm having with her, and then I leave. I'm like, okay, right.
Yeah.
Feel centered, I feel better, and But it's true what you said. You feel like a better human, right? When you find those places and when you connect to them. My husband is Waihi Beach, and so when we drive over to Waihi Beach, there's that point where you come over and you just see the water for the first time, and he breathes deeply every time, and he didn't realize he did it to start with. And I go, do you realize? Because he's a builder. Works 7:30 to 5 or 5:30 or 6 every single day, often in the weekends. Barely sees the kids often in those huge week work periods, and he just every single time he's driving along, and you just see him go, and his shoulders drop, and it's just like, oh, thank you. But we haven't done that for a while because of everything going on in the world, and each time we think we're holidaying, we're not. So it's been a strange time, but I think everyone has that place. It's just finding it.
Yeah, definitely. And also finding that the combination for me is really clear. So I know I need, if we're going to go away to relax, like I say, it's not in a 5-star casino with all the trappings. It's actually much more, lo-fi, and it's connected to water and as much of nature as possible.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's needed. And if it can be little and often through the year rather than saving up for that one moment, then all better for it. But, and the feeling I get when we come back from a place like that is one of, it's not that I feel refreshed and renewed and full of energy. It's just like, no, I feel steady,
Steady.
Yeah. Again,
steady is our word of the day, James.
Absolutely.
And random question. Are you an active relaxer, or can you passively relax, if you know what I mean?
I can passively relax. I can literally flop down next to the water with a book there and do nothing.
Just happy.
But my wife's an active relaxer, and my children, obviously the children, are active relaxers. So I think I have become an active relaxer. Definitely on a weekend, like I can't just sit around and do nothing. I'll drive everyone insane. But where getting out and doing stuff, kayaking, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, I think the last time I passively relaxed was probably like our honeymoon, which was over 11 years ago. So
such fond memories.
Fond memories. I really do remember it. Sitting there with that
priceless.
Nothing.
Priceless. I'm an active relaxer, so I really struggle. Like when you talk, like your up north sounds beautiful, but I don't know that I could ever handle it. I'm such a doer. Like, we went to Rarotonga years ago for my cousin's wedding. I was there for 3 days and I was like, get me out of here. I don't have anything to do. And my husband's like, there's water, there's beach. You just sit. And I was like, I can't. I need things going on. Yeah. I'm going to work on that as I grow and develop, because I'd love to. I would love to, and because taking it in, like, I love sitting outside the house and listening to the tuis in the morning, and but I don't do it for long enough. And I think if I could sit a little bit, instead of going, oh, I've got 10 minutes, I'll do 10 emails, and sit there on my phone and just Well, that is the end of my questions for that, but we've got some quick fire ones if you've got a few minutes, James.
Yeah, of course.
So 3 things that made you smile today.
Well, I've smiled a lot in this conversation, I have to say. It's I always every day, the first smile is always at one of my children. It's whether it's the sort of scrunched up, half asleep waddle of one of them coming down the the hallway into the into the lounge, but anything like that, or if they're chipper, one of them will wake me up, start banging me on the head on the side of the so it's always that first smile is always at the kids. And I've noticed the quality of, like, when my wife, she gets home from work and we'll she'll say hello to everyone and everything, and then we'll start making dinner, and there's I find those conversations are usually quite funny. They're not burdensome or heavy kind of conversations, and it's about getting back on the same page after whatever days happened. So that's and it's always nice when you have a meeting, a work meeting or a meeting like this, where you can have a rapport with somebody and make them smile, or better yet, they make you smile. And be the bright spot in someone's day, right? Like, that's one of my goals, is if someone's got to spend time with me, be it for work or or for whatever, I try and make sure I've made them laugh out loud or smile or something that is a bright spot, so they don't dread seeing me again, I guess. But that if they were having a tough day, then it might just be just a little bit of sunshine. Nice. Favorite book? So I imagine this is going to be a tough one for you. Oh my God. Yes, that is a tough one. Look, I'll one of the books that's with me at the moment is a book called The Auctioneer by a woman called Joan Sampson, and it was her only book that she wrote. It was her first book, and she died of cancer just after its publication, and it made a big splash when it first came out in 1974. It's an American book, but it's since sort of died down, and I just really love the book. It really speaks to me in many ways. It's a quiet thriller, but it feels a very contemporary one. Well, and it's I just sort of go like, wow, this woman with this one book that she wrote, and how it's such a loss that how many more stories did she have in her? What could have been was really interesting. So I'm a bit of an avid fan of that one. So wow, okay, that's like what we talked about with the perennial seller, right? Those things that may not necessarily have, well, it was big obviously in its time too, but the things that just keep going timeless, that keep moving through with us. Definitely. 3 favorite smells. Baby, you pick up a baby and it's straight to the the top of the head, and that baby smell. I get incredibly clucky around babies and little kids and stuff, so that's always that, and that's still the thing I do with my children is it's always sort of kissing them and smelling the top of their heads. I do the washing in this household, so I love the smell of clean washing. washing out on the line dried washing in the sun, and that smell. So, and a third one is I like isi miyake, which is what I normally wear as a cologne.
Okay.
Yeah, I think of it. I've worn it for that many years now. I go like, yeah, that's what the smell of when I feel good. That's what I associate with how I smell. That's my congruent self.
Nice.
You
said it a much more eloquent way. We talked to Will Hall a while ago, and he goes, "The smell of my own musk," and I was like.
Thanks.
And he goes, "Oh no, I did. I said the smell of my own must," and I was like, "It's just the way you said it. It's fine." What makes you laugh?
Well, Will Hall's musk, obviously, is one. Look, I mean, I find, my daughters, but all children. I think children are incredibly funny because they are utterly committed to whatever they're thinking, and no matter how wrong the interpretation of information that they've got, they absolutely find the truth of something in there. And it's that level of commitment to that sort of angle of perspective on what it is that they're talking about. That's what the stuff of great humor has always been made of. And so I'm always laughing at what, any of my children are sort of questioning or observing, or what sort of how they're drawing, connecting points.
I'm very grateful my team aren't here, because I'd say what you're describing as a child is what I'm like as an adult, and I will persevere even though I know I'm wrong. I get to a point and I'm like, oh no, that's not what it was at all, but I will stay that course. In the hopes, and that brings the biggest laughs, because they prove me wrong later, and then they'll show me how adamant I was, and then I'm blatantly proven wrong.
But I think there's something, because I am. I mean, my friends and those closest to me would say I'm a pessimist at heart. I like to consider myself a realist, but they would say a pessimist. But I think there is something to be said about optimism, which is truly funny, and even the most sarcastic or pessimistic comedians or jokes. There is a level of optimism in what they say and what they do. And I think optimistic people are generally, on the whole, they are the ones who are much funnier. Whether they're right or wrong or what have you. That, the joke is ultimately the joke. It's not at anyone's expense. There's a level of truth in there. And look, there's this. No one makes my wife laugh greater than herself when she stuffs something up, and I'm the first one to latch on and sort of point it out. And she has this specific kind of laugh when that happens, where she's in tears, and I can't. It's so infectious. So my wife making herself laugh at her own expense is a great humorous tonic for me.
Oh, I love her already. Tell Debbie I want to meet her. I love it. I think we've dealt with this, but first job?
Yeah, that video store. I worked in video stores from 13 to 21. That was I think about 5 video stores during that time. But just life growing up in a video store with all these adults, with all these people. I was the youngest by far, and dealing with the customer, the different situations. I got a lot of life lessons there, and a lot of learned a lot about people and behavior, because you're also a bit of a voyeur, being on the other side of a counter. And the video stores used to be that hub of community, and you get an insight into how people think, how they act, what they like or what they don't like, as they say.
So true. And I mean, I used to always go into our local one and be like, what should I watch? and they knew that I didn't like scary things, so they'd never say, "Oh, there's screams out or whatever," or Final Destination. They'd just be like, "Oh, there's this new comedy," or "There's this." And I'm like, perfect, Yeah. And they always knew when I had an assignment for school, because I'd try and find the book on movie form so I didn't have to read the book. They'd go, "Another assignment?" Yeah. Anne of Green Gables. God, I can't remember the other ones. Oh yeah, I watched a lot of movies to save me reading. Go-to pick-me-ups songs on a feel-good playlist.
So I have this thing when I'm working on a project, I often build up a playlist around the project in terms of feeling or tone or something, a song that I think would be good at this point, or a scene is sort of got to feel like this thing that I've sung. So I drive my family up the wall of when I'm working on something, I will listen to that playlist on repeat again and again and again and again. I'm just finishing up a script with my writing partner, Eli, and there's a scene at the end that we want to have Enya's Orinoco Flow.
Yeah.
And I've never been a fan of Enya, but now that creatively it's sort of latched itself to this scene and I'm building the scene around it.
Yeah.
I have probably been listening to Orinoco Flow ad nauseum, and it gets me. It is a pick me up. It's because it's it's the thing I love about music. It cuts through all the it shortcuts all the brain and just goes to the primary senses, your emotions. So pending the project, it'll be whatever's sort of enriching that, and that gets my brain going. But yes, Orinoco Flow by
I love that. I'm adding that to my playlist. I'm a music buff, so I've been on TV twice, embarrassingly, for my lyrical knowledge. It was the singing bee. So you don't have to sing well, you just have to sing it right, and I know lyrics. But music is my soul. Like, everyone knows. They'll be like, if we need a playlist, go to Des. If it's this, go to Des. Like, yeah, music, and it could be anything. I don't have a genre, so just.
So you're like the human Shazam. Shazam, really, aren't you? You are like somebody who went, if I could make Daz an app.
Yeah. What would Daz? That's so true. I'm going to remember that. If I was an app, I would be Shazam.
Yeah, you should come up with a new one, Dazam or
Dazam. You just made my day. I'm going to go inside to my kids and be like, call me Dazam from now on, please, guys. 3 things you are grateful for today.
I'm really grateful for the weather being warmer and brighter and everything. That's a huge effect on my moods a lot. So making sure I get time outside there. This meeting, I also met with 4 other people earlier today, and the quality of conversation's been really buoyant and energized, and that's some days that's not always the case. So I'm feeling that set me up in a good place to go forth and meet the book crowd today. And I'm really grateful for the chance. I'm going to meet some new people this evening, and I'm glad I'm doing that. But actually, that's part and parcel. The other thing I'm really glad for is that my body is sore from yesterday's workout, which means it worked. And it's that pleasurable kind of like creaks and groans that aren't, from, rusty hinges. They're from like, oh, right, those muscles are live and engaged. It's a nice thing. I
love that. Sometimes I push it too far. In the Waikato, we've got these stairs called the Hakamatas, and sort of near Narohia, and I can't remember now, I want to say 10,000 stairs, but it's a hang of a lot of stairs. And I did that twice, both times very unfit. And my goodness, it's like 2 weeks later, I'm still having to hold on to things to like sit down. And, it's not good. But I love that. I love that kind of like, yes, I did something. I did it the other day. I felt my abs just as I moved. I don't really joke that I don't have abs, but I turned and I was like, oh yeah, no, I definitely did something on Saturday morning. Good.
Yeah, no, it's that reward that keeps on being after a few days.
Yeah. Favorite concert?
Yeah, that we can. I mean, I like the concerts that I get the most out of are anything that's like the NZSO, so the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. It's orchestral stuff is the big mover for me.
Yeah.
You know, so I can't remember the last NZSO what specifically it was, but every time I've gone to the symphony orchestra I've been sort of moved and blown away much more, even though I listen to a variety of other things. It's those are the concerts which sort of feel that I'm the most moved by, or come away with sort of a, you're kind of floating a bit afterwards.
Yeah.
As opposed to being, yelling and screaming and, some sweaty armpit, being
ears ringing for 4 hours later. Yeah. Hobbies.
Yeah. Look, I mean, in many ways, I've sort of turned all my hobbies into my vocation. I would say, I mean, I love gardening. It's a summer hobby. I'm out in the garden then, and I do love gardening, and I love camping, and I love sort of getting outdoors in that sense. But gardening is, I find it's that thing of you get the appreciation of the the fruits of your labor is in your body at the end of the day. You get all the benefits of being outside, and you get to you get the you could admire your work and be in your work and what you've done. I mean, even just last weekend stint, which was our first sort of time getting back out in there, it's like, it's something that I've always done.
Yeah.
But it is sort of more autumn, or not autumn, more spring, summer based.
Nice.
I
like that. What does a lazy day look like for you?
A lazy day. I mean, a really pleasurable lazy day starts with a coffee and a donut of the French persuasion, ideally, and a sort of a late lunch or a long luxurious lunch, and just sort of meandering, whether that's just in one place or throughout the day. But there's something where there's no, where you keep a lid on that pressure to check the phone, send an email, to do anything, where it's just absent, and you're just present more than anything, and not in your head. A good lazy day means I'm present, and no matter what I'm doing. So, and that can be quite active, a lazy day in that sense. But it's got to be with. I find I can't have a lazy day on my own. I can have an unproductive day on my own, but I can't have a lazy day on my own.
Yeah.
I need to be with people, and it's about I think I relax a lot more with people.
100%. 100%. Last one, qualities you love about yourself. This is a question I would have found a couple of years ago really hard and confronting to answer, not just from humility or anything like that. It is quite confronting. The things I like about myself is that I get scared to do stuff, and then I just go and do it anyway. And it's sort of just being able to accept, going like, yeah, this is scary, this is going to be uncomfortable, oh well, and just doing it and getting over that. That's a lot easier now, and I like that. I like my creativity, my approach to creativity, I think the creative brain, and engaging in your creative brain is incredibly practical and useful in and across a myriad of things, from not just making film, but also
helping out and doing things around the house. I like that I look at things from outside the box.
Yeah.
In that sense, and I like being a bit precocious too. I like that I'm precocious. I think I've always been precocious, but now I sort of see that as, having a time and a place and a useful, it's not always about being contrary or obstinate. It's, when do you need to, look at something through a lens, a precocious lens, to find to open up a discussion around a solution, when, rather than shutting the solution down. How do I be more thorough in what I'm choosing to do, or the way I want to act? And sometimes those, a level of precociousness, I think, is really helpful and can be a good stimulus too. So it's a fine line to walk. Sometimes people just think you're being a smart ass as opposed to being, purposeful in why that is. But I think, again, having that creative view on things of how do we look outside of things, outside of the box. Children have no problem with looking at things outside of the box. Children are precocious. They don't even see the box.
Yeah.
The potential. So, yeah, I admire that a lot.
There was of course, the movie Beauty and the Beast years ago. So I grew up, that was like my first ever, I think, movie I ever got to go to with my parents. And they call Belle precocious. And it's just one of those words, when you just hear a word, you're like, that's where that links to is, and nothing wrong with that.
No, it's...
I'm so proud. I'm so proud when people don't, when I say, what do you love about yourself? So many go, oh, it's pretty. It's so awesome that we can stand here and go, actually, there are a few things I really do love about myself. There's probably more I need to acknowledge that I'm good at and say, but it's such a great thing, because Kiwis, we're not very good at saying anything great about ourselves the best of times, but to actually have something you can say, no, I do. I love that. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so important.
Because I always think, if you're at home and your plumbing's busted and your sink's leaking and everything, and someone else actually knows how to fix it, they don't go like, oh, well, I actually do know how to fix, but it's like they don't hide the talent to go like, oh, I can fix that. We can, it's these aren't sort of lofty things. It's just about your knowledge and your sense of self, and what you've learned is, applicable and present all the time, and making friends with that. And it's something I'm always trying to tell my kids. It's like, it's all right to be scared. Being brave doesn't mean an absence of fear. It's actually, being brave means a very acute awareness of, and knowing why something is scary, and doing it anyway in the best way possible. So it's making friends and turning around some of those things that we might have been taught early on as negative aren't actually negatives. They're actually positive, need to be acknowledged.
It's harnessing that energy, right? There's a talk we did with David Galbraith that you can watch on our site too, but he talks about like 10 seconds of courage and going, okay, I'm pretty scared. What am I going to do here? And it might be like, at the time we talked about it, I was trying pottery for the first time, and I'm not very creative, and I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I need to try something different. And and he was like, so you're probably going to be anxious, right? So you got to make the step, get in the car. 10 seconds, get in the car. Okay, now what do I need to do? I need to turn the car on. I need to drive to pottery. I'm going to get to pottery, and I'm going to feel pretty overwhelmed, or I'm going to feel a bit anxious, and like, gosh, should I just go home? He goes, 10 seconds, out of the car, lock the car. And then what do you need to do next? You've got to walk into the building, sign in, And he said, what's the next thing? You get down, they show you where you're going to do it. Now you got to get your clay. You get up, 10 seconds of courage, go walk, get your clay. And he said, you just got to almost compartmentalize it for a bit, but feel the fear and use that, because, and he'll talk again, watch it, it's awesome. But he talks about, having a kitten in your brain, and it's like, meow, meow, meow. And it's going, no, don't do it. And he said, but if you wait that 10 seconds, then the lioness comes in, as they describe it, and she's like, go, do it. Like, but you've got to get past the little meow first. But if you get away, if you give the lioness time to activate, And he talked about a test with snakes at the bottom of people's feet in an MRI machine. It's pretty awesome. But yeah,
I'll check it out.
But they saw this new part of the brain light up that they'd never seen before, and that's what they call now the lioness, which was they saw a snake and they're like, oh my god, and so they had to push a button to move the snake closer to them, and so but by letting the scared part go and then waiting that time for the lioness to come through, they saw this part of the brain light up, and they'd move the snake closer to them, which was, these are people who are petrified of snakes. So anywho, I could do that all day. But thank you so much, James. I'm so grateful for your time today. And there are so many massive wellness takeaways for everybody who watches this. So I'm so grateful for you today. And no doubt we will talk again soon, because I just love what you're doing. So you've got a big supporter in me. So if you ever need anything, just sing out. But thank you so much.
My pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.